What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This week we are on our twin turbo Chevelle. It is time to do our exhaust and get this thing closer to off the lift and out that door onto the road. As we speak about lifts, big shout out to Wildfire Lifts this week for hooking us up with this bad to the bone 4-post lift, man. We're super excited to have it in our shop. It gives us extra lift to get stuff to be able to work on it. It also gives us a little extra storage. What I kind of like about this lift, and they're not on there yet, but they come with casters, so evidently you can move this thing around your shop. And I'm thinking maybe one day we're gonna be able to move it outside and do some power washing underneath cars before we get to work on them. They're kind of cool because you're able to keep your car at ride height, so it kind of helps you when you're doing suspension work and exhaust. Takes a little guesswork out. Again, shout out to Wildfire Lifts. Let's get into it. Obviously, we're gonna be using all vibrant fittings and exhaust parts, mufflers, pie cuts. We're gonna be doing oval again, so it's basically just to keep ourselves with a little extra ground clearance here. So spec chassis do give you a area through the transmission section. The original mount kind of went up and gave you a space, much like this one, to run your 3-inch exhaust through it. However, we had to make a custom mount for our BMW dual clutch transmission. So now we kind of lost that. We switched over to oval pipe instead, just to save like 1 inch of ground clearance. So we're gonna be hugging this frame rail all the way down. Our muffler is gonna sit up in here and then up and over our rear end. As we are very transparent here in our shop, we did have to move some fuel lines. I disconnected them yesterday while Andrew and I were kind of going over this run. All we gotta do is extend these two where our Y fitting was for our supply, and then the return needs a little extension here from our flex fuel sensor back to our return line. So we're already working on getting those fittings, and then we have some brake lines here that we're also gonna have to make a little adjustment. We're gonna extend this one out here and rebend this one, kind of hugging our firewall a little bit, and then I'll be able to make this 3-inch exhaust kind of turn down into this area where we're gonna convert from our 3-inch round to our oval. So we have all our vibrant fittings, pipe, our mufflers laid out, and we are ready to go. So let's get it. All right, so I got a section of our 3-inch oval pipe clamped to our frame rail with a couple towels as spacers in between. I may even wrap this section of exhaust where it's close to our frame, so we don't end up heating up our frame and damaging our coating on it. We got 2 oval pie cuts, bringing our transition kind of in line, in plane with our 45 that's coming down up there from our exhaust. I got 2 pie cuts on this end, which is gonna get us kind of like in line with our fitting here on our transition. So I'm gonna go ahead and drop the car down, get this thing taped up, lined up in there, and then we'll come back down and connect the dots down here. That will pretty much get us through here. I kind of left a little long. What I'll probably do after I get my 2 runners going is get my muffler somewhat mocked up in here, and then I'll know exactly how far I want to cut this back to make that connection. I definitely want to keep my exhaust kind of back this way as far as I can. That way I could get my transition up and over this way here. So we want to keep a little space between our rear end and our muffler, which probably, like I said, will make me cut this back a little bit further. All right, passenger side is pretty much set in stone. Last thing we have to tack together is between these 2 pieces right here. And then we'll be able to use our V-band clamp right here to connect this back together. Then this piece will be modified in some way. I'm gonna be cutting it over here. So I got 2 oval 45s coming this morning. So the X pipe's gonna be in this area right underneath our frame, keeping it tight to the frame as possible. So we're gonna do a quick little X pipe here, and then it's gonna go right into our mufflers. So we get this one situated. I'm gonna go ahead and get these brake lines out of my way, and then we'll start working on this.
All right, I'm having to make a little bit of change here with our brake lines. Getting hard lines bent up, pre-made from the Roadster shop when you buy a chassis is an option, so we opted for that. But with our twin turbo LS, the exhaust design really isn't gonna work with the way that they had the brake lines originally. They were originally, the rear circuit stopped right here and the front circuit stopped right here, and both went up the frame rail. So what we're doing is just shortening the rear circuit to come up more close to the firewall, and then we're going to extend our front circuit to come further back. So it gives us a large opening between the brake lines and the shock tower and control arm mount area.
We got our brake lines moved. Andrew started fixing those. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take this run off. I'm going to get rid of this straight piece right here and shorten that up a little bit, and then I'm gonna start making my way back to you, babe. All right, I got my driver's side exhaust. This is where our turbo sits. Out of the car, I reworked it a little bit around all the steering components and kind of leveled this section out through the upper control arm, giving it a little more clearance to the top of the control arm. It was about 1/4 inch off. I had some room up top, so I added a tie cut here in the middle to bring that up. And then we had to kind of window around the old steering linkage. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack all this up. And this piece here is going to be my piece that's going to get us down the firewall, and then I got to make my connection to my oval pipe and the transition that is already up there. So little by little we'll start peeling back some of this tape, getting some tacks on it, and we'll get it back in the car. All right, now we got the driver's side all connected. It was a little more tricky than the passenger side because we have the steering components, our brake lines. Thank God to pie cuts, we were able to do so. Looks pretty good. Everything's pretty even, left to right, centered up. The pitch of my runs are pretty much the same. So now we're gonna start laying out our X pipe. I'm gonna use a laser level. Go ahead and get the X pipe kind of centered up and figure out what we're gonna need to do to connect our two ends. All right, there you go. We got our X pipe connected to both of our runs. So So I'm gonna go ahead and just pull this metal tape here. I'm gonna get all this tacked together, put it back in place, get our fittings to come up through these little slots right here. At that point, I'm gonna transition from our oval to our round, and this is where our muffler is gonna be sitting. So I'll probably also add some kind of hanger back here, maybe off of like this flat section right up on the frame. There's gonna probably be a V-band back here on our mufflers. So if we ever have to take all this out, this could stay up back here. All right, now that we have our X pipe hanging in the air temporarily with these clamps, it's time to start thinking about our next step, which is gonna be getting our mufflers hung. Andrew's over here moving my fuel line so we could keep going. So our mufflers are gonna be sitting in this general area right here. So I do have this piece of tube steel up top that I'm gonna utilize to build some kind of hanger. So we'll hang this side of the muffler off of that tube steel. This side's gonna have our V-band. All right, we are all tidy up until the end of our mufflers here. Both mufflers are hanging by a bracket. All this is taped on, ready to tack together, and then our connections are good to this point. I am waiting on a couple more pieces of vibrant pipes, bends, to get it up over the rear end, so that's coming. Meanwhile, I'm gonna go ahead and start doing some more hanging. I'm gonna come off of this transmission bracket mount. I got these. I'm gonna just cut a bracket, which will bolt onto these two holes. This will bolt onto that bracket, and then we'll bend this rod to catch the side or the bottom of our pipe on both sides, and I think that should be pretty sturdy, man. So we'll have two hangers here, two hangers back there, and then we'll have two all the way in the back once we get up and over that rear end. We got our bracket mounted onto our transmission mount. We have our rubber isolators in place. We have our rod that we're gonna go ahead and weld onto our pipes. Boom, boom. We'll get these attached and we can get these clamps off once and for all. Exhaust is coming together. We're pretty much all wrapped up all the way back through the X pipes into our mufflers. Everything's set real nice and tidy. I'm gonna go ahead and add a clamp, or I got these little hangers from GSI. Those are gonna get welded on here. I wasn't too happy with the hangers that I added here. They kind of twisted everything, so we may add those back, but as a whole, it's really solid. So at this point, I'm gonna start working on the rear back here, coming up over our rear end, and I'm gonna hand David the privilege of start welding our exhaust from our turbos back. here on the exhaust is trying to jump over our rear end, keeping a gap between the top of it because it's gonna come up and down when you go over bumps and stuff, and keeping it away from our fuel lines so it's a little tight through here. I do have a couple of these J-bends which we're able to cut kind of where we want them. So I'm probably just gonna use like this top section just to kind of come up and over our rear end. And then we're gonna have to come out of this muffler pretty quickly. So I already got a couple of these pie cuts put together like so. We'll have a little straight piece here, try to come up over, and then probably gonna 45 back down and come through here. Already laid a piece of pipe in between our fuel cell and our frame section, and then it's kind of just dumping out here in the back. I'm not exactly sure that's the angle of our cut we're gonna have, but you know, overall it's kind of what we're gonna be looking at. I'll kind of play with that once I get this section done, and then we'll kind of see what we can do. So this is a J-bend from Vibrant. So you got a 45 here and you got a double 90. This piece is really handy to have when you're doing an exhaust system. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off some of the sections that we're not gonna need, like this straight leg here. Right now, this is all I'm looking to keep. Hopefully our span between inside and inside is gonna be good for our rear end. You can cut it here also and add a section if you have to. So we'll go ahead and take this over to the chop saw, get this thing cut up. We're up and over our rear end, then we got a couple pie cuts, kind of shifting our 45 back towards the frame, but we are hitting this bracket here for our rear sway bar. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop off a little meat off the 45 back here, clock it a little bit, going towards that frame rail on this side. Probably gonna take a little length off of this side as well. Come back up here and see how it looks. All right, we are up and over the rear end. We got clearance, plenty of clearance on everything. Everything's looking real good. We're starting to swoop back towards the frame on this side. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and get my tip section set. So we're gonna be using this little piece right here. It's got a 45 bend. I'm gonna add 2 pie cuts at the end just to make it a little more aggressive down. Also, it'll look kind of cool through the back of the car when you're looking at it. There you go, we got the passenger side done. Everything's all taped up all the way through to our tip. All in all, I think that's pretty good. Now we're gonna turn on over to the driver's side and work on this one. And yes, this thing got squished by our lift. So I have a new one coming. So fortunately, we're not gonna be able to weld this side yet. Vibrant's got a new one coming out to us. And once that comes, we'll be able to finalize it, but can't go leaving that up there. All right, now that we pretty much got our exhaust, all the piping done, I'm gonna start working on a better hanger situation. I got these 2 hanging points here provided on the Roadster Shop chassis, but this is the GSI part. So I ordered these, that gets welded right there to the pipe. So I'm just gonna make a little bracket that's gonna come off these 2 mounting points, come up and come over, and then this will get bolted right in. So 2 little brackets for this side and this side, and that should take care of all this. And then I may still utilize those as well, just as a little secondary hanging situation, but these I think will be completely substantial. And then we'll probably do something back here too. But for now, let's get these 2 brackets made. All right, there you go. There's the bracket bolted onto the frame. We got our GSI hanger. It's just like this, and I'll go ahead and throw a couple of tacks on here. That way when I take this down for the final time, we'll get one last clean weld on it, and this will be good to go. These will obviously have to come back off and get painted, but for now, we're gonna keep moving. Trying to finish up this exhaust here. I have all this routed, all taped together. I try to get it out, and I can't. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drop this tank. Luckily there's no fuel in it, but I'm gonna have to lower the car down, get some of these fittings loosened up. Got 3 bolts here on both sides. We're gonna have to loosen those up. drop it down a little bit. I'll have to take this fill neck off as well. Then we'll be able to take the pipes out. I'm also gonna be adding some kind of hanger back here. So once I get it dropped, I'll figure that out as well. I also will be adding a slip connection, a stainless bros. I was trying to avoid that, but once the tank is up in there, this is where I'm gonna add it. This happens to be a 3.5 inch piece. This is as well. So this will fit in here correctly, just because once this is all in and welded, there's no way to get this whole piece stuck up in there without probably dropping our rear end out and our tank. So down the road, if you ever have to service something, or I don't know, slip fitting here and over on the other side. Let's get this thing down and get it done. All right, that wasn't so bad. We'll go ahead and tack all this together. We're gonna take this straight piece out. We're gonna be adding our slip fitting here with a clamp. Then we'll also be able to figure out how we're gonna hang this off the body of the car over there while the tank's out. We'll get this thing together, get this fit back up in there, and keep moving. Passenger side is 100% done. May still have to add a hanger back here, but overall it's pretty solid. Also may want to throw some heat protection around some of these areas, like where we're coming over here by the coilover. Maybe throw a little wrap around that. Still have to drop these zip ties down. And first I gotta get these tabs welded here to our exhaust. But I'm gonna wait because at some point we're gonna be pulling this all back down, check all our welds, and get our drive shaft in. So when our drive shaft comes in, we'll be able to take all this down, get our drive shaft in, check everything, and final weld everything, bolt everything. But for now, I'm gonna go ahead and jump on to the passenger side. Our new muffler just came in, so we're gonna take this damaged one down, switch it out, and then we'll be able to continue. Got our new Vibrant muffler for our driver's side prepped up, ready to go. We got our pie cuts on this side, we got our V-band on that side, we got our J-bend ready to cut up. So let's get to it. We got our transition in on the driver's side, up and over our rear end, slightly 45ing back over towards our frame, then 45ing parallel to the frame. We got our slip fitting on. Next step is going to be cutting down our pipe here with our 45 to match our passenger side. So I'm just gonna hold that little guy up there, make a mark, go over and cut it, and then we'll bring it back over here. We need to get our proper distance off of our rear valance, just like this one, because we want them to match perfectly. So we'll get that up in place. We'll get a measurement here between our slip fitting and our pipe. We'll add that piece. Then we'll be able to take this whole thing out, weld it up. That pretty much wraps up the piping. The last thing we'll have to do is add some sort of hanger, mostly just to keep it from bouncing around back here. It's pretty solid. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere, obviously, but one more hanger back here just to hold it in place and to keep it from rattling around. And that will wrap up the exhaust, man. So let's get that done. All right, we got both of our tips pretty much in the exact spot on both sides. Our angle to the ground is the same. Our distance off our frame rails are the same, and they are level. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my passenger side tacked in place at the muffler, both sides on the V-band and on the outlet side. And then we are all set as far as, you know, the piping. Then we're just gonna go ahead and add our 2 hangers on the back. I'm probably gonna pull these out and polish them a little bit. I may get rid of the weld seam on this little pie cut here as well. And polish these, that way, you know, when you're kind of like checking out the car, looking around, boom, you know, it's nice and shiny. But other than that, we'll get that passenger side tacked in place, we'll pull all that out, final weld all that, and then we're ready to move on. Good news, we are officially done with all of our exhaust piping. Our tips are in place, nice and tight. Last thing we're gonna do is add our GSI pipe hangers. So, fortunate enough, it kind of works out. We're just gonna drill right through the back of the floor in the trunk area, and we're gonna bolt that in like that, and throw a bolt through it, and then we'll go ahead and get that tack welded on. Once we get those in, then we'll be able to finalize our tips, get our gas tank back in, and move on. All right, well, that wraps up the exhaust. Our fuel cell is back up. Everything is mounted, everything is tight. We're looking real good. Exhaust came out pretty sweet. Pretty happy with the oval. Looks really awesome. Super clean job. We are one step closer to getting this Chevelle fired up. Next episode, I think we're gonna be throwing some fluids in it. Andrew's gonna be getting this thing started. We're also gonna be throwing on our rest of our body for the car, our inner fenders, our side fenders in the front, any of the little miscellaneous items that we need to get put back on this car. We're also gonna be slapping some more of that interior in, so make sure you guys are following along. I know it's been a long journey. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, peace.